The Electricity Act 2023 signed into law, 2023 signed into law by President Bola Tinubu will for the first time allow providers of energy from renewable sources such as solar, wind and water to receive the price for what they produce based on the generation cost. It will cancel the Electric Power Sector Reform Act of 2005 and consolidate all legislations dealing with the electricity supply industry to provide an omnibus and ideal institutional framework to guard the post-privatization phase of the Nigerian electricity supply industry. It would also provide a framework for the improvement of access to electricity in rural, unserved, underserved, urban areas through the use of conventional sources and renewable energy off-grid and mini-grid solutions. With me on the show today, joining me via Zoom to assess the benefits of this bill, he is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Century Power Generation, Dr. Chikweloka Ume. Dr. Ume, it's been a while. Thank you so much for joining the program.
Good afternoon, Tolu. It's nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes. Let's start with the importance of this bill. The law, I beg your pardon, it's no more a bill. It's been signed into law. The last was 2005, and now President Tinubu has come to put pen to paper, and it's now a law. What direct impact will these have on electricity generation, transmission, and distribution across the country?
The last time we spoke, I think I mentioned that the only way we're going to have real progress in the sector is by allowing the private sector to drive the entire value chain completely. Now, this law, in principle, is trying to do something to that effect, but not quite. What it's doing, it's taking the laws from the federal government's hands and put it in the state government's hands. So again, the sector is still in government's hands. The challenge with that is this. For a state government to have a real say in what happens in the sector, in the state, they're going to have to create their own laws that will be passed by their own ESCO and House of Representatives and all the people that are supposed to create laws within the states. And it's only when that is done that NERC can hand over the reins of controlling the electricity industry in the state to that particular state. Of all the 36 states in Nigeria, only 3 states have bills that have been signed: Lagos, Edo, and Kaduna. Okay? So the remaining 33 states have to try and get their own act right. And in trying to do this, as you can already see what's about to happen, they have to get those supposed experts in the industry to come and help them craft their own specific bills that apply to that particular state before they can make any real difference in what happens in the states. And like you know, it's going to take a long time to do. What I have continued to say, and I'm going to say it to you once again, if this government wants to see any real change, or any government at all wants to see any real change, you need to completely deregulate the sector. Now, this law is meant to put post-privatization, is meant to have a private sector is supposed to give the private sector the ability to make real change, to bring in investment. But the private sector is not going to be able to do that yet. You know, you still have to go and deal with NERC for those states, those 33 states that don't have their own laws yet. They still have to deal with NERC. And as you know, this is I don't think it's going to make much of a change yet. That's my opinion.
But can the states or can states actively play in this new arrangement? What about states without funding capacity? Because we know electricity generation and supply is not cheap. Can stable electricity really be very affordable?
Well, steady electricity should be affordable. It can be affordable, and it's affordable in those other countries where they've gotten their act right. If you're expecting states to go raise the money to build generating plants, to build distribution mini grids, to transmit power within their states, you know that it's not going to happen anytime soon. These states, a lot of them can't even build their basic infrastructure, roads, schools. They're still talking about paying pensioners. They're still talking about creating security, providing security within their place, even giving water, potable water to their people. Now you want them to go and raise money to do power? It's not going to happen. In my opinion, it's a joke. States have no business building generating plants. States have no business building mini grids. They have zero business doing that. If the states want to get serious about doing what they need to do, they need to allow the private sector to do it for them. Bring in the private sector and give them the things that they need. Create those laws that allow the private sector companies, let them bring their money. And there's a ton of money out there. There's a lot of money out there for them to come in and do what they need to do. If you're waiting for the states to do it, it will never happen. At least not with the current setup that we have in this country.
If I go to my next question around privatization, funding, Disco saying cost-reflective tariffs and all of this issue, and this arrangement has been there because of the privatization process. Now, when you're saying that with the present arrangement, what sort of arrangement are we supposed to look at before we now check the role of the regulator? That's the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission in this new arrangement.
Okay, Tolu, let's go back a little bit. I don't know how much time we have on this segment, but let's go back a little bit. Today, under the current dispensation, GenCos produce electricity and sell to NBET. NBET now sends the power or supposedly sells the power to the discos that we have running. I know, by the way, several of the discos have failed and are being sold. I think 3 of the 7 are being resold, okay? Now, the NBET is waiting for the discos to collect the money and give it, pay the discos, pay the GenCos, pay transmission company, and then pay the gas suppliers for those people that are producing electricity with gas. As you can tell, it's not working. I'll give you another example. Some of the government parastatals, some of the companies run by the government, I'll give you one example, Ajokuta Steel, have not paid their bills for many, many months, running into years. If government-owned entities are not paying their bills, what more private companies? Now, the government has put money to have meters go out to companies, to private individuals, and so on and so forth. It's not working. Out of the different government programs that have been created, how many meters have actually been given out? Maybe 1 million, maybe 2 million. That's it. 200 million people. So in the current work, what we are doing again, around this thing that is not working. And until we understand that we cannot continue to play politics with the electricity industry, we're going to keep running around in circles. Now we have passed this law. We wasted 8 years doing one program after the other. And I kept saying it will not work. It hasn't worked. We have not added 1 real megawatt to the power grid. We're still playing around 4,000 megawatts in a Nigerian electricity power industry. At what point do we declare a state of emergency and allow the government to say, you know what, we can't do this. Let us completely hand this system over to the private companies. Let them go and bring their money and do this. Give you another example. Do you know that if you want to get a license today, you're going to pay in dollars for your license? You're paying in dollars in a country where we are spending naira. So paying dollars to the government for a license that will be used in this country, what is it signaling to the private investors? We're not ready. Where is the rule of law? If I sign a PPA with someone today and they renege on the agreement, where is the court that can enforce that PPA and make sure that I get my money? So Tolu, I really don't know where we want to start to peel this onion. Okay, we're sitting on vast resources of gas, vast reserves of gas, and we are trying to force companies, licensees, under the new law to make sure that they produce power or buy power from renewable producers, which means put solar panels in different places. Are we trying to make money for foreign countries, or are we trying to produce electricity for the Nigerian people? We have a lot of gas. Why don't we use the gas? We have a lot of coal. Why don't we use coal in a clean way? There are technologies out there today that can use coal in a clean way. Why are we not thinking about doing that on a massive scale? So again, we're running round in circles. We create one law and we clap for ourselves thinking that we've made a difference. We haven't made a difference when you boil it down to simple terms. My training as an engineer teaches me that if I want to solve a problem, I should boil it down to first principles, simplify the problem first, which signals that I understand the problem, and then I can solve it. And that solution is simply put the entire sector in private hands. NERC's role is really regulatory, trying to guide how the sector runs, not putting the cart before the horse, creating very nice laws that mean nothing at the end of the day. Again, we have some very smart people running in NERC. The MD of NBET is a very smart person. There are some really smart people in Transmission Company of Nigeria. There's some really smart people in the ministry, but their voices are not being heard. So I'm not really sure where we want to go as a country.
Well, before we wrap up this conversation, the ability to also use other resources. I know we've gone this route too before, but you know, for other sources like wind, solar, and all of this, we are still yet to do well. Even if it's for rural electrification, what is your assessment of the performance with regards to that, say solar and taking advantage of off-grid?
Yeah. It's asking me whether the data.
There are many sources of generation that we can take advantage of. You know, the conventional, which is gas, coal, and then of course you have hydro, which is considered renewable. There's wind, there's solar that we can take advantage of. But those should not be major focus of the electricity industry today. Rural places, you know, underserved areas can benefit from a little bit of those renewable sources, just a little bit, but the majority should be based on base load that can come from conventional generating methods. Right now, in future, we can augment what is done in those areas. You know, but if we want to focus on solar, we want to focus on wind right now, then we're getting it wrong yet again. That's my opinion. And several years from today, you and I are going to say the same thing over and over again because we're going to continue getting it wrong until we do it right.
Dr. Ume, are you there?
I'm supposed to see the icons. What do you do?
All right, Dr. Ume there will be reconnected. Dr. Ume, can you hear me? Well, interesting. Part of the discussion there talking about other sources of generation at this time. I wanted Dr. Ume to land on that a while before we wrap up this conversation. Dr. Ume, are you there? All right, Dr. Ume, let's wrap up on this note that in your closing thoughts now, what will be your projection or outlook for Nigeria's power sector? Well, is there an issue of political will, capacity to perform, corruption, or what really is the way forward? What are the quick wins for the new government? I know you've identified some, but specifically, what are some of the quick wins in your thoughts for the new government?
You know, Tulu, I think it's a little bit of everything that you just mentioned. There's you know, we have a lot of experts, wizard experts that are advising the government on what to do. Some of those experts should not be here. I don't think they should be in the power industry, giving the government any advice at all. Okay, we continue to look for quick wins in the sector. And I said, you know, the best thing the government can do is this. Any government should do. First of all, understand that this sector is in an emergency state. You know, treat it as it is in a state of emergency. And when you say that it really is in a state of emergency, what you need to do, first of all, is to completely relax the regulations that are preventing the private companies from doing what they need to do. Once you completely relax the regulations, the different parts of the value chain should be able to deal with each other on a willing buyer, willing seller type basis, starting from the gas producer to the gas transporter to the generator Transmission Company of Nigeria needs to be removed from the government hands and put in private hands. And then distribution. And there should be no monopoly. Distribution companies shouldn't have a monopoly in their areas. We should have power traders that are working across the entire country. If this happens, you're going to see a drastic increase in available power to be sold. Again, compare this to what happened in telecoms. If this had not been done in the telecoms industry, you would not have the likes of MTN, Airtel, Glo making any real inroads, any real impact on telecoms in the country. And oh, by the way, in the very rural parts of Nigeria, people have access to telecommunications. People have access to cell phones. Some people have access to the internet in very rural parts of the country where there's no electricity. This is because it is in the hands of the private sector who deal with this as a pure business, not as a social thing. Only when this happens will you start to see any real change. Any government in power should have the political will to do this change that I'm predicting, that I'm proposing. It is not rocket science. And if it's rocket science, it's okay. There are some rocket scientists in Nigeria, including myself. So it can be done, but the government must have the political courage, the political will, and the interest of the entire country in its staring it in the face, not the interest of a few people. This is the only way we can make a real change. And in the next 4 years, we can see a proper change in the power industry if they take this approach. Anything short of this will result in the same story at the end of 4 years from now, 8 years from now, 12 years from now. We will still be running around trying to generate 4,000 megawatts reliably in this country. That's my opinion.
Chukweloka Ume, I must thank you so much for your time. Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer, Century Power Generation. Thanks for your insight into this topic. Do enjoy the rest of your day.